Good evening, good afternoon, good gracious. Hello, welcome to another Listening with Vobes. Listen. Oh my God, what a start. Welcome along. It's Monday the 25th of January 2021 at 4 o'clock in the UK, where I am twiddling the knobs, which you can't see because they're just out of view, but they are there twiddling around. We are very, very close to the end of our book, Children of the Archbishop by Norman Collins. And what a romp it has been. We will continue reading it in a moment, just checking to make sure the system is working and that you can actually hear me and see me, more to the point. So, hello to the lovely Julia who is there. This is good afternoon. I'm in a good mood today as I managed to convince my eldest and hubby to join me and Joseph on a stroll to the park. Fantastic. Turbo Stream, hello from a snow-covered Birmingham. We haven't had any snow down here, not a drop of it, which is a shame. Nice to see you, Turbo. What else have we got? Holly and Co, hello to you. Steve G, good afternoon on this bright but chilly day. I've been out for a walk and made a video. It'll be up tomorrow. It's just uploaded. Billabong O'Neill, hello. Great video this morning. Sunny, freezing here. Thank you very much. It's not going to be for everybody, obviously, a video about editing, but it's people kept talking about it. I'd probably do some live editing. I thought what would be good, it'd be a talk, a demonstration of me editing one of my own videos in sort of semi-real time, or at least part of it, so that you could see how it worked. For those that are interested, I'll do a special workshop and we'll advertise it, whatever. Cooper 68, good afternoon. Justine Jones, hello from North Somerset. Cooper says, first one I am going to have to catch later, taking mother-in-law to town. Oh, fair dues. Rami Boo, good morning to you. How are you, Lisa? On the show tonight, the lovely Julia and I, on the Vogue show tonight, will be opening presents that Rami Boo, the lovely Lisa, has sent to us. So, a live opening. Thank you very much. John F, good afternoon. Ed Loud, good noonie afters to you. Lee Lawson, hello. Dave over yonder, howdy pilgrims. Linda Kane, back in time. Probably won't be typing much, but will enjoy the listening. Fantastic, nice to know you're there. James Poulton, Audrey Forbes, Alan Sandell, and Susan Luca and Dudley Sawyer. Good afternoon. I think I have a slow puncture on my bike's front tyre. Oh, a bit like myself. Oh, I hope you haven't got a slow puncture, Dudley. Poor old thing. Today I'm just drinking ordinary tea. I have failed to get any lemons and I've almost run out of ginger. So excited, Lisa. It's been a challenge not to peek inside the box, yes. And Philip Hammond and Mary, there we are. Fantastic. And anybody else who happens to have come along, and if I haven't said hello, sneak in, sit down and enjoy yourself. Right, we are very close to the end. Very close. I don't know whether we'll get there today, but it's quite a few. No, it might be tomorrow. We might end up tomorrow, but that'll be okay. It's all good. So, I can't remember where we were, really. Oh, the portrait and the frame. It was the chapter in book 6. Just checking that this is clean enough to see through. One moment, ladies and gentlemen. I have to get my filthy hanky out. This is actually clean. This is clean this year, you know, this hanky. January the 1st. I always think it's good to start the year with a clean hanky and change it around mid-July. Now then. Meanwhile, the Archbishop Bodkin Hospital was in a state of confusion. Yes, I can't remember that, but it would not have worried, for Sergeant Chiswick never did any kind. I can't remember quite what we were doing, but it doesn't really matter. We'll pick it up. Dame Eleanor had been ordered by a doctor to rest, and with Margaret there to look after her, she was prepared this time to obey his orders. In consequence, it was Canon Larkin, pro tem, presided at the meetings. Did I read this? I can't remember if I read this, but I think I did, didn't I? I think I read this bit, but we'll read it again and then we'll carry on. In consequence, it was Canon Larkin, a born administrator with a keen actual sense. He naturally spent a great deal of time discussing the nature of the hospital's financial settlement with regard to Dr. Trump. Oh, yes, I remember. How long should he pay? him, he asked what should be the special place, what limit, I can't even read it. I read it before, can't read it twice, you know, the brain. What limit should be placed upon halfway period? Did sick leave count for purposes of pension? Was the warden's lodging a prerequisite or an emolument? He was a great man for thoroughness and detail, and he succeeded finally in bewildering even himself. In the result, Dr. Trump continued to receive his full cheque every month, and Canon Mallow, who was unable to get a word in edgeways, even when it was about hospital business, was left to direct the Bodkin fortunes single-handed. So there we go. Anyway, I did read that bit, so we'll skip to the bit that is actually this one. Andrew Norris has arrived, so there we are. That was why I wasn't performing properly. But it was not at Broadstairs where Dr. Trump was still waiting to hear from the Missionary Society, or at the Archbishop Bodkin Hospital. That the really important things were happening. It was at Dame Eleanor's. At first, Dame Eleanor had been difficult. Convinced that somehow or other the presence of Sweetie was going to upset everything, she had sulked, refused to see the child, ignored her. And her agitation, her misgivings had revealed themselves in a variety of ways. She was, for example, perpetually asking Margaret whether she was sure that she wasn't overtiring herself, and then ringing the bell for her unnecessarily just to make certain that she wasn't devoting too much time or attention to Sweetie. Even that, however, was in a sense excusable, because the heart attacks, the chokings, the palpitations, the feeling, to use Dame Eleanor's own description of it, as though an elephant had gone to sleep upon her chest. Funny enough, I know what that's like, because I had that effect in Norfolk one time when I was there, while an entire string audience was playing in her ears, had grown no better. She was entirely confined to her bed nowadays. Admittedly, she was making the most of her imprisonment. The bedside table was loaded with papers, minutes, reports, and her writing case, red morocco outside and Russian leather within, was permanently open upon her knees. There was the illusion of still being at the hub of things, but she knew that it was only an illusion, knew that if the smallest thing went wrong, that even if her address book or her fountain pen slid off the bedclothes onto the floor, she would have to start ringing that damn bell again in order to recover it. That was why she had to make sure that people were on their toes all the time, ready to come if she needed them. But with her old possessiveness reasserting itself, it was hardly to be expected that she would leave Sweetie alone altogether. Still keeping the child at arm's length, entirely out of sight, in fact, she began to manage her. She spoke of the need for friends of her own age. She hinted at idle hands. She recommended needlework and embroidery. She suggested that Sweetie might like to take class lessons from the cook. She asked whether anything was to be done about the child's music, and reminded Margaret of the piano that stood there idle in the schoolroom. She became anxious that Sweetie's religious instruction was being scamped. She advised long walks. She wanted to know what books Sweetie was reading. She worried about her. She fretted. The one thing that she did not do was to see her. But at last, curiosity overcame her. There was perhaps more to it than mere idle curiosity. It was jealousy, probably, that was at the back of it. Margaret had just bought Sweetie some new clothes, and Dame Eleanor suddenly decided that she must see them. She felt the need to know everything about them. What colour were they? Were they wool or a mixture? Where had Margaret gone for them? Had they got nice sensible hems that could be let down? Remembering Sweetie's age, she was sure that she wanted to be sure they were suitable. Were they winter or summer, or just one of the in-betweens? Then, when Margaret's answers all seemed to her so unsatisfying, so evasive somehow, Dame Eleanor resolved with equal suddenness that she must not see merely the clothes, but Sweetie wearing them. And because at the back of her mind she knew that it was all a plot really, a subterfuge to insinuate herself, that the clothes as such meant nothing to her, she became self-conscious and even coy about it. That is, if she doesn't mind coming to see a poor bedridden old woman, she finished up. Some people do, you know. Directly after tea was the time that was chosen. Margaret, in fact, was already on her way to fetch Sweetie. She found her at the dressing table when she reached the room, and as soon as Margaret entered, Sweetie turned away and tried to conceal something. But Margaret had been too quick for her. "What's that in your hand?" she asked. "It's nothing." "Yes, it is." "No, really." "Show it to me." "Oh, very well, then." Sweetie opened her hand and held it out in front of her. In it was a pair of tweezers. Margaret took them from her. "What are these for?" she demanded. "Plucking my eyebrows," Sweetie told her. Margaret thrust the tweezers away in a pocket of her house dress. "You must leave your eyebrows alone, do you hear me? You don't want to go bothering about such things, not at your age, you don't." Sweetie shrugged her shoulders. "I hadn't started yet. I was only choosing." When they had reached the door of Dame Eleanor's room, Margaret paused. "Now listen," she said. "Be nice to the lady. Say, 'How d'ye do?' when she speaks to you, and if she wants to shake your hand, remember it's this one." "I know," Sweetie answered. And about saying how d'ye do." Altogether she could not make out what the fuss was about. She did not remember having seen Margaret so agitated before, did not remember even having seen her agitated at all, in fact. But now she was trembling, actually trembling. What Sweetie was not prepared for, however, was the size of the room and the smallness of Dame Eleanor. She had always thought of her as a large woman, the size of Mrs. Gurnet at least. Against the background of the Bodkin Hospital, she had always seemed simply enormous, whereas this was a tiny little old lady who was watching her out of a big pile of pillows. She looked as though she'd been propped up specially for the occasion. I expect she's going to die soon," Sweetie reflected. "Perhaps that's why she wants to see me now." But the little old lady still appeared to have plenty of life left in her. Her voice didn't seem to have changed at all. Sweetie remembered it from speech days and founders' days, and the voice wasn't even particularly nice to her. It was the same old Archbishop Bodkin Hospital voice. "Come nearer, child," it was saying. "I can't see you from right over there." Sweetie stepped forward. "How d'ye do?" she said. The reply seemed to take Eleanor aback a trifle. "How do you do?" she said, and extended a bony yellow hand on which the rings hung loosely. "I hope you're better," Sweetie answered. "I'm sorry to hear you've been ill." Dame Eleanor found herself looking at the child more closely, and as she looked, however, she became aware that Sweetie was studying her just as closely. There was a steadiness in the dark eyes that was strangely unnerving, and not a rude staring either. The mouth was creased up at the corners into the outlines of a polite social smile. Dame Eleanor stopped regarding her. "Do you like being here, child?" she asked abruptly. "Oh, yes, thank you," Sweetie told her. "I think it's a beautiful house you live in." Dame Eleanor lay back against the pillows. "I'm getting her sized up," she thought. "She's a little minx, that's what she is. The pretty ones mostly are. And what they need is taking down a bit. Everyone's too nice to them, just because they're pretty." She paused. "Better than sleeping under hayricks?" she asked. Sweetie paused too, But she kept her eyes on Dame Eleanor all the time, and the smile, the polite social smile, had not even flickered. "That was only temporary," she answered. "There wasn't anywhere else to go." Dame Eleanor raised her eyebrows. "Nearer, child," she said again. "I still can't see you properly." Sweetie came right up to the bedside this time, and with the last step she had suddenly come into focus of Dame Eleanor's lorgnette, which I gather from the lovely Julia is a pair of glasses on a stick. Dame Eleanor, like those little glasses on a... yes. I don't know if I pronounced it correctly. Dame Eleanor took another long, quizzing look at her, and she had to admit it. Yes, she had underestimated the child. There was more than ordinary good looks in the face. The eyelashes were as long as an actress's. But she knew too much to spoil minxes by flattering them. And all that she said was, "You've got a pretty face, dear, but you ought to do something about those eyebrows. They're all over the place. They're spoiling you." She paused. "And now let's see what Margaret has been buying for you." The emphasis was obvious, really. Dame Eleanor was speaking already as though Sweetie was hers, and Margaret had simply been carrying out a small commission on her instructions. And even though the hand that shot out was cold, it was still expert. Dame Eleanor had always claimed that she knew more about materials than any dressmaker, and that her fingers encountered now disgusted her. The dress, it was a blue one with white collar and cuffs, and white bows upon the pockets, was scarcely made out of any material at all. It was the merest rubbish, cheap and smart-looking and nasty. "Where did you get it?" she demanded. "At a shop in Putney," Margaret told her. Dame Eleanor shook her head. "Shouldn't have gone there," she said. "Why didn't you go to Marshall's? They've got proper juvenile department. They'd have looked after you." "I'll remember that next time," Margaret answered. "And what did you pay for it?" 25 and 9, Margaret replied. It was a lot of money, 25 and 9, when it came out of a weekly wage of 30 shillings, and it was because there were so many other things that Sweetie needed that Margaret herself was still wearing the same black dress, the same shabby blue overcoat in which she had met Sweetie at the remand home. But Dame Eleanor only shook her head. "Simply throwing good money away," she said. "That's all it is, just throwing it away. I've told you before, it's cheap clothes that cost the most in the long run. Look at me. Some of my dresses are 10 years old, and they're still as good as when I bought them. Why? Merely because I paid the proper price for them in the first place." She paused. Her heart was fluttering again. That's the state that she was in nowadays. She couldn't even discuss clothes without half killing herself, and she didn't want to do anything silly, like fainting or having one of her really bad attacks while the child was still in the room. So she pressed her hand up against her heart to steady it. But it was no use. She must get rid of the child somehow, must be able to be quiet again. She didn't, however, want to simply send her away abruptly. All children are sensitive about that sort of thing and don't forgive easily. And she wanted Sweetie to like her. She had always prided herself on the fact that she was popular with children, had, in fact, believed for years that if only things had gone differently with her son of hers, that she would have been the absolutely perfect kind of grandmother. So she made a final effort. "I'll give you a new dress, dear, a different one, for a present," she said. Her breath was coming out jerkily by now, and she had difficulty in making the words sound natural. "Come, see me again one afternoon," she said huskily. "Thank you very much," Sweetie answered. "I'd like to come any time." Outside the door, Sweetie looked up at Margaret. "Was I nice enough to her?" she asked. "Did I do what you told me to?" She paused. "And now, can I go and do my eyebrows, please?" she added. Oh dear, Sweetie is growing up. We're on chapter, 58. Growing up. How are we doing? Everybody all right? His comments are weird today. Lots of echoes. Whose comments? Have I got echoes coming out? Did you say me? Is there something wrong with the audio? Let's have a look. People aren't always nice to a pretty face. After all, some people have hurried to me. I heard you the first time. What? Oh, the comments. Yes. Oh, the comments on the thing. I think they are playing up because we had a few issues when... Sorry, stuff is in my eyes. Probably my fingers. We had a few issues when I did the comments. So it may not be working terribly properly, but as long as you can still hear me, and I'm not repeating it myself, as long as you still hear me and I'm not repeating, as long as you can still hear me and I'm not, this is the BBC repeat service. Chapter 58. The letter from China and the East Indies Missionary Society had arrived at last, and Dr. Trump was jubilant. He already was absorbed in missionary thoughts. He had done some pretty hard reading during the past fortnight. Naturally, until the job was definite, he had not wanted to waste his time in picking up odd facts about outlandish places like Singapore and Hong Kong, but for the last fortnight he'd been making up for lost time. He now knew almost everything there was to know about population statistics, climate conditions, means of communication, ethnological types, competitive religious systems, conversion rates. So far, it was only the Tamil primer and the Kuyu dictionary that had defeated him. That is not to say, however, that everything was equally simple and straightforward on the domestic side. On the contrary, Felicity was opposed to the whole idea of his going, while all too obviously she did not mind, indeed seemed rather prefer, having her husband separated her by some 65 miles of Southern Railway. She apparently could not bear the thought of having separated by 5,000 miles of P&O, and she raised every objection she could think of to the whole project. She needed him, she said. His son needed him. Mrs. Walpole needed him. Everybody needed him. It would be a loss to the country if he went away. And with Sebastian's chest as it was, how, she demanded, could she contemplate either taking the youngster out there amid the fevers and high temperatures, or leaving him behind to be looked after by other and less loving hands? To all this, Dr. Trump had been forced to make the most evasive of replies. Secretly, so secretly, in fact, that he had scarcely admitted it, even to himself, he was rather hoping that he would be able to go alone. He was not, even in his mind, disloyal to Felicity. There was nothing of the cheap or the fugitive about it. It was simply that the prospect of a job, and nothing but a job, so entertaining, no chest troubles, no women folk, and above all, no Mrs. Walpole, seemed the kind of earthly bliss for which he had always longed. He wanted to be busy. He wanted to be a busy, celibate missionary. And flushed with the new enthusiasm, his whole being was now aflame with the desire to convert the heathen, baptize him, get him organised. What a field! He rejected. What boundless scope! Above all, what opportunity for modern methods, lectures and leaflets and lantern slides and ideas and things. He's excited, isn't he? But it was Sweetie to whom the most interesting things was happening. During her 6 weeks with Dame Eleanor, she had been merely installing herself. It was the succeeding 3 months that really counted, and by the time these were over, she had fairly turned things upside down. Or rather, Dame Eleanor had turned them upside down for her. It all started from the day when she had sent for Sweetie in order to see the new dress, the 25 and 9 one that she had inspected and then said wouldn't be had at any price. She had got herself... she had got herself so much worked up about it all the time that she had to spend 3 days flat on her back without seeing anyone. But as soon as she was well enough, she sent for Sweetie again. This time, having sent for her, she wouldn't let her go. She monopolised the child. Nowadays, Sweetie came in first thing in the morning. Immediately Dame Eleanor had been tidied up, simply to say goodbye, simply to say good morning. Looked in again before lunch, had her tea at the bedside, and came in last thing to say good night. There had been a brief experiment of getting Sweetie to read to Dame Eleanor, but that had been abandoned after the first attempt. Dame Eleanor was an exacting listener, and Sweetie read appallingly, with no pauses except for breath, and as far as Dame Eleanor could make out, no understanding of the simplest words. Sounds like me then. It was because of this revelation of ignorance that Dame Eleanor would have put her down to... See, even I'm struggling. It was because of this revelation of ignorance that Dame Eleanor would have put down to sheer stupidity if she had found it in any other child, that she decided to engage someone to keep Sweetie on with her schoolwork in the mornings. But Dame Eleanor did not consult Margaret. She didn't even tell Sweetie. She just simply engaged a woman. In consequence, Sweetie now hated the mornings. From 9:30 to 12, she was closeted with the widow of a church schoolmaster, and found herself right back in the middle of things. Scripture, English, history, geography, that she had hoped that she had escaped from forever. So progress was slow. There was complete agreement between Sweetie, Dame Eleanor, and the schoolmaster's widow on that point. But as the woman was dependent of Dame Eleanor... Sorry I'm reading so rubbish. It's just the story has got now, having been really, really exciting and really, really good, it's kind of just soggy now. It's not really going anywhere. I feel like he should have ended the book where it was. But I know we've got some loose ends to tie up. But I do find it what is the point? You're reading this stuff and thinking, well, what's the point? Nothing is actually happening. We know that Trump's going off, and we know Sweetie's living here, and it's sort of got a bit sort of soggy. It's the only way I can think of it. I hope you're still enjoying it, but it does. I'm just struggling here to sort of get going again. Maybe it's because it's Monday. Maybe it's because it's cold. Maybe I'm just rubbish at reading. Where were we? Then there was the matter of Sweetie's bedroom. As soon as Dame Eleanor could get up and move about again, she came up and inspected it, and immediately she found everything wrong. It was too small, she said, too dark, and it faced north. And becoming suddenly sentimental about Sweetie, she declared that a child of Sweetie's age needed all the sunlight she could get. There was the blue bedroom, of course, but that looked over the drive, and you could never be certain that you weren't going to get disturbed. Or the Chinese room, but though it was never used nowadays, Dame Eleanor was very fond of its suite of lacquer furniture, and felt that Sweetie would damage it somehow in the slapdash way young girls always damage things. But why not Derek's room? It had stood empty for all that time. Indeed, there had been a time when she thought of just leaving everything as it was and simply screwing up the door. As for herself, it must be getting on for 16 years since she had ever been inside it. And the fiery impetuousness that in her time had carried her roughshod through innumerable councils and committees now focused itself upon Derek's room. First, there was the problem of redecoration. A young girl's room, she explained, as though she'd been designing young girls' rooms all her life, must be pale cream, with chintzes, not creatines? Cretons? Cretones? I don't know what they are. And furniture, Cretones. Cretones. Creton, I don't know what they are. What's a cretones? and her furniture was kept as little, and the furniture kept as little like bedroom furniture as possible. When finally everything had been settled to her satisfaction, Dame Eleanor put her hand on Sweetie's shoulder. "There you are, dear," she said. "I've got it right at last. That's the way you want it. It's always worth taking the trouble when it's something personal. It's your room, dear, and I was determined to have everything in it just the way it should be." She paused. "Thank you ever so much," Sweetie answered, squeezing Dame Eleanor's hand. They had got into the hand-holding stage about a month ago. I think it's lovely. I never knew that I would have such a beautiful room." Dame Eleanor smiled contentedly. It made her feel warm and thankful just to think about the child's delight. "And if there's anything at all you want," she told her, "anything you don't like, or anything that I haven't thought of, you've only got to say. Then we can forget all about getting it ready, and it'll be up to you to make it a happy room. Is there anything you'd like?" There was a pause. "Could I have a gramophone, please?" Sweetie asked. Margaret was angry afterwards when she heard about the gramophone. She insisted that Sweetie should not have asked for it. Asking for it made her look greedy, mercenary, acquisitive, and she kept saying, acquisitive. "I don't like to see any girl growing up to be a cadger," she told her. She'd been trying hard to bring Sweetie up properly, and to some extent she supposed she had succeeded. It had been easy to teach Sweetie how to dress properly, how long to spend on brushing her hair, how to wash without leaving brown horse collar halfway down her neck. They had taught her most of the things at the hospital, but after all, they weren't the most important things. It was upon Sweetie's mind that Margaret was unable to make an impression of any impression whatsoever. It seemed to be entirely self-enclosed. Appeals were useless, and Sweetie continued exactly as she was, selfish, self-confident, loving a sprawling, desultory sort of way, and often rather bored. Well, she's a teenager. Have they not met teenagers before? It was Sweetie's boredom more than anything else that worried Margaret, and she was convinced that she was bored because she accepted everything so easily. It never seemed to occur to Sweetie that instead of this room of hers, with the pink-shaded light over the dressing room, she might have been sleeping in the basement somewhere in Finsbury Park or Balham. Well, I think that's a true observation, isn't it? That's a true observation of kids who don't know. They don't know any better because they don't know any better. They just accept things and they don't know. And we all... Cretin is a heavy coating... How do you pronounce it? How do you pronounce... Cretan? Cretani? I hate it when it's like double N-E, because does that end... Is it like Cretan, or is it Cretani? Because there's an N-E, you know, or is it a silent E? I always struggle on bloody words. Richard, I'm still very much enjoying the story and your reading. Thank you, Julia. I'm struggling today, I am. It's so near the end. I was hoping for a nice, build-up to something exciting, but it just seems to have sort of got bogged down with stuff. But anyway, we will carry on. Part of the trouble was that Margaret didn't see, and I can't remember how it ends now. I remember it being a brilliant book, and it has been. I just don't want it to be. I don't want it to be boring. Part of the trouble was that Margaret didn't see enough of Sweetie nowadays. It was as if, even if she had seen more, she felt certain she would have been able to have some effect simply by what she referred to as keeping on at her. But Dame Eleanor was reserving Sweetie for herself. When she went for drives, it was now Sweetie who sat beside her, and Sunday afternoons had suddenly been taken away from Margaret too. At first, Margaret had been able to have Sweetie entirely to herself from lunchtime onwards. But for the last 3 Sunday afternoons, however, Dame Eleanor had decided to have Sweetie downstairs with her. It would be good for the child, she had said. Give her confidence, take away her shyness. In a sense, it was everything that Margaret had ever hoped for to find Sweetie. In a sense, it was everything that Margaret had ever hoped for to find Sweetie made one of the family in this way. But there was one thing about it she didn't like. She kept hearing things about her at second hand from Dame Eleanor. It was from Dame Eleanor that she learnt that Sweetie wanted to have riding lessons. It was from Dame Eleanor that she heard that Sweetie wanted to let her hair grow. And it was from Dame Eleanor that she discovered that Sweetie had not forgotten Ginger. Dame Eleanor seemed merely to be amused by it, even showed a friendly childlike disposition, she said, to want to know how her old school days companion was getting on. After all, they did see a lot of each other during those days together, she went on. We must remember that. For my part, I think it's wonderful the way she's got over it. Sometimes when I look at her, I just can't believe it. She's a sly little puss, that's what she is, she added. I know her, I can tell. But Margaret was worried, and that night she spoke to Sweetie about it. What's this you've been telling Dame Eleanor about Ginger? She demanded. A half smile crossed Sweetie's face. Oh, nothing. Just that I'd like to see him again. Can't you think of anything but Ginger? You promised to forget all about him. You can't forget about people just by promising. But why do you have to bother about him so much? Because I like him, I suppose, Sweetie answered. Margaret was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, she was quieter, gentler. You'll have to forget him sometime, she said. You'll want to get married yourself one day, and then you'll spend all the time thinking about the man you're going to marry. And he won't be a bit like Ginger either. Don't you see, things can never be the same again. If Ginger came here now, he wouldn't know you. I bet he would. He wouldn't. You're different now. Well, anyhow, I'd know him. Margaret paused. But can't you see, she began again, you'll meet lots of other people now. Nice people. People Dame Eleanor would like you to marry. Not people of Ginger's class. Well, it's my class too, isn't it? Margaret didn't answer. Well, if you don't do nothing, that's silly, she said. You can't be a lady for the rest of your life. Sweetie shrugged her shoulders. There's no fun being a lady if you've got to be bossed about all the time, she answered. You're an ungrateful girl, that's what you are, Margaret told her. You just think of nobody but yourself. You just said I only think of Ginger, Sweetie swung round suddenly. Where is he, anyhow? Margaret flushed. I don't know, she said, and if I did, I wouldn't tell you. I can find out. That you can't. I'll write to Canon Mallow. He knows where all the old boys are. And he won't tell you because I'll warn him. I'll get Dame Eleanor to say that you're not to be told, not on any account. Sweetie threw her head back. I shall find out soon enough when I want to, she said. As soon as I'm ready, I shall write and ask him to come here. I'll invite him. Dame Eleanor will let me if I ask her. You can't stop me. She likes me more than she likes you. Margaret got up and stood in front of Sweetie. She was pale and her hands trembled. I'm sorry I ever troubled about you, she said. I'm sorry I didn't leave you to go into service. That's all you're fit for. You're just cheap and mean, coming here and playing on an old lady's feelings. Sweetie drew in her breath sharply. She was calmer than Margaret. You've no right to say such things, she said. You aren't anybody. You're just one of the servants. It was then, to Sweetie's great surprise, that Margaret smacked her face. She's obviously her mother. And that's so obvious that it seems silly to hold it back. My tea is cold. Sorry, I'm getting frustrated with myself at not being able to read properly. I really find it frustrating. As you can see, it irks me. There's a good word. How are we doing it? Let's have a break for a moment. Let's see how you're doing. I thought it was creosote. Yes, I know. That's what I thought. It was creosote. Cretin. No. Creton. Creton, says Lee Lawson. Is it French? Is it a French word? A stupid person or a... No, that's a cretin. That's not what we're talking about. No, it's hotted up now. It's just hotted up now. Definitely not creatine. That's used to test renal function, and creatine is a cardiac lab test. I thought creatine was something that bodybuilders used. The last section was fine. Yes, I know. It's just starting to... It was like... I suppose we've just had to go through the mud. It's like one of those scenes in a film that you kind of... It's telling you information, but it's just done in a slightly dull way. I mean, he's been brilliant. He's been brilliant all the way through, so a few moments of not quite brilliance, I suppose, can be allowed. Right. Chapter 54. It came as a complete shock to everyone when Canon Mallow suddenly announced that he wanted to get rid of Miss Britt. There had been no warning of any kind, no open clashes of authority, no rows, not even a sign of bickering. Canon Larkin, in particular, was entirely unprepared for it. He had just resigned his position on the parochial school's Central Finance Committee in order to succeed Dame Eleanor as the new chairman of Bodkins, and he was looking forward to an orgy of statistical analysis. Then, on Canon Larkin's very first day at the new job, Canon Mallow delivered his ultimatum. Either Miss Britt went, or he would have to go himself, he insisted. Canon Mallow was very nice about it, of course. He didn't want to put anybody to any trouble. He even offered to stay on until the end of term, whichever way the vote of the board might happen to go. And when Canon Larkin asked him what led him to arrive at this irrevocable decision, Canon Mallow was unable to give any satisfactory reply. He simply said that he felt the hospital needed somebody who was warmer with the children, somebody who didn't talk so much like a textbook and cared for human beings for their own sake. Someone, in short, who had a heart. By now, but by then, bigger things were happening at the Archbishop Bodkin Hospital. Mr. Pavarius, who we hadn't heard of for a long, long time, had been cited as a co-respondent in the divorce case of Twiddle versus Tweedle. Oh, Twiddle versus Twiddle. And here, Canon Larkin... What the hell is that about? Mr. Pavarius had been cited as a co-respondent in the divorce case of Twiddle versus Twiddle. And here, Canon Larkin had felt compelled to act immediately. There was no hesitation. Scandal of any kind, and more particularly scandal connected with divorce, was an anathema. I can't say that word. An anathema. You know what I'm trying to say. I can't say the word. An anathema. An anathema to him. How do you pronounce that? Somebody tell me phonetically. How you, an anathema? Is it an anathema? I know what it means, but I can't. It's just one of those words that I just go... As soon as he saw the paragraph in the evening paper, "Top hit writer cited," was the heading, he sent for Mr. Pavarius, and he was brutal. A more massive personality than Mr. Trump, he was also more commanding. "Unclean," he said loudly and menacingly as soon as he had heard all the circumstances. "Distinctly unclean, Mr. Pavarius. You must leave us. You have no further need. We have no further need of your services." Oh, here we go. Anathema. Anathema. Oh, is that how it's pronounced? Anathema. atheist. No, it's not atheist. He may have been an atheist. Anyway, anathema. This is good education for me, if nobody else. Sorry to put you through all this. Where are we? I've lost the thing. We have no need of your services. You may go tonight. Must go tonight, in fact. You positively shall go. The speed of the dismissal was all deliberate and predetermined. Above all things, Canon Larkin wanted to act before Canon Mallow's natural kindness of heart, his gentleness, could begin complicating matters. Nor was there any appeal elsewhere. Mr. Paverius, in fact, was finished, a ruined man, broken in spirit, not daring to look anyone in the eye. He crept out of the big Gothic gate and made his way back miserably to the mews flat that he had taken after he had been humiliatingly turned out of Deirdre Gardens by the outraged Miss Lewises. And even the magic of knowing that Desiree would be there in the mews waiting for him in a complete set of salmon pink negligee that he had just bought her seemed somehow to have evaporated. But it was not the fact that he had been cited under his own name. Apparently the muskrat in the shabby bowler had been a veritable jervot among detectives that haunted him. It was the truth about Desiree's name that hurt him. That was something so silly, so damn silly, that he could not help feeling about being cited. That was something so silly, so damn silly, he could not help feeling about being cited by an injured husband called Twiddle. Oh, I see. Oh, I see. So Twiddle versus Twiddle was Desiree, whatever the sodding name is, her husband. She was married. Oh, yes, that's all coming back to me now. She was married. She'd got involved with him. And the detective in the bowler hat had come up and discovered that they were having a thing. That's right. And so, cool. And his name was, and her married name was Twiddle, and he's a bit upset because Desiree's surname was Twiddle. I've got it. Blimey. I pronounce it the same as Richard. I think I've always had a bit of speech impediment, believe it or not. Anathema. Anathema. Suddenly I can say it. And then it was an It's because you have to put an in front of it that makes it difficult to say. An anathema. If it was just a anathema, oh, it doesn't make. It's just as bad. Oh my God! Today, I'm sorry. It feels like I'm just wading through treacle. I shouldn't say that. It's not a professional thing to say. You're not supposed to say how difficult the job is. It is difficult reading sometimes. Anyway. And trying to work out. This is such a brilliant book. I'm sorry to make a mess of it. And I'm sorry to keep apologising. I know. Hate it when I keep apologising. Dame Eleanor was too much preoccupied by her own affairs to care very much about Mr. Paverius when Canon Mallow told her. They're mostly bad eggs, these organists, she said cryptically. You be careful who you let in next time. Why not try a woman? There must be a woman who can play the organ. It's not hard work. It's all done by electricity nowadays. That's a woman speaking. And with that, she dismissed the matter from her mind. It was something legal, something to do with her will that was occupying her thoughts. Margaret knew that much. Mr. Thring had been out of the house twice already, and he was coming again this afternoon. Mr. Thring had been out to the house. Mr. Thring must be the solicitor, I suppose. The meeting proved to be an unusually long one. Mr. Thring called immediately after lunch, and by 5 o'clock he was still there. He was a large elderly man, like a sedate, gazelled... Oh, I've only got this 2 paragraphs and then we're finishing. Have no fear. He was a large elderly man like a sedate, grizzled buffalo, and by tea time he looked as if the Indians had been after him. His chief trouble lay in the fact that Dame Eleanor had asked him to come alone. She disliked, she said, having strange clerks and secretaries fussing about in her bedroom. In consequence, Mr. Thring had been forced to write things down to her dictation, and this had not been easy. Dame Eleanor was not a woman. Dame Eleanor was not the woman she had been. Her thoughts nowadays came in bolts and snatches rather than a continuous stream. And when she wasn't dictating, she was asking Mr. Thring to cross out what she had just said. At the end of 3 hours, Mr. Thring's pad looked as if it had been drawing maps of tube railways. There was one little incident that left Margaret puzzled. It happened around tea time. Dame Eleanor had just rung for her to bring down the digitalist tables. I don't know what a digitalist table is. When Sweetie came in to pay her regular afternoon visit. But this time, for some reason, she appeared to have forgotten about the child entirely. She brought down the lid of the writing case with a bang and told Sweetie to go away again. "Outside with you, miss," she said. "Out you go. All in good time. We don't want you here now." It was all so sudden and unexpected that Margaret looked up startled. Had something gone wrong, she wondered anxiously? Had Sweetie been rude to Dame Eleanor? Had they quarrelled? But it was all over so quickly as it had begun, for as soon as Sweetie had got to the door, Dame Eleanor called her back again, right back. Made her come right over to her chair, in fact, and when she was within arm's reach, she pulled her down and kissed her. "My little Sweetie doesn't understand," she said. "But how could she? This is my secret, not hers. Not yet. Now, say how do you do to Mr. Thring, and then run away and leave us. We're very busy, aren't we, Mr. Thring? We have our work to do." And that is the end of that chapter. We're on chapter 60. And I'm going to stop there, thankfully. We may finish this. I think we'll finish this tomorrow. And hopefully I shall be in a better... I don't know why I struggled with that today. Really struggled. But anyway, not much has really happened. I think I need to get these glasses sorted. Anyway... sorry you stepped in the feline up, Chuck, says Julia. He says, reading, digitalist tables, foxglove for heart conditions. Oh, tablets. See, I'm not reading properly. I might have to get some new glasses. I think my eyes shot to bits. Is it digitalis? Deadly nightshade. Oh, right. I read it as digitalis. Because of digitalis, is it? Ah, yes, digitalis are foxgloves, not deadly nightshade. Not to worry, Richard, still enjoyable. I'll be better tomorrow. Apologies for that. Every now and again, I just have a bad day. And today was that. But, you know, the Vogue show will go well, I'm sure. It's just... Anyway, whatever. I'm going to go and sort out my dinner. And I've got lots of videos and a little bit of art to sort out for the Vogue show tonight. The lovely Julia hopefully will be with us, so that will smooth the way. But thank you very much. Sorry about the difficulty. And I will see you tomorrow. I was in good form before I came in. I just don't know. The words are jumping about. I probably need to go and see an optician. I think my eye is not reading terribly well. Maybe there's something they can do. One more try at cretonne heavy cotton fabric. Cretonne? Talking of eyes, I had to go to the eye clinic urgently. Oh, did you? I hope you're all right. Recurring, Dudley. No, Ben is right. Digitalis comes from foxgloves. Jolly good. Are the opticians? I might have to go and see the opticians. I might need reading glasses. Is that because I've come to a certain age? I did a video about age the other day. I'm fading, ladies and gentlemen. I'm fading. I'm fading fast. I will go now to my bed. You may leave me. I will be all right in the morning. I will take my digitalis tablets I will mix them with old gloves and deadly nightshade. I will be all right. Tomorrow is another day. I have to have reading glasses last year. Oh, my God. What's the matter? What's happening to us? Good luck with them eyes, everyone. I dotted my I and I crossed the T. That was the problem. I was supposed to hit the T with a golf club, but never mind. Until tomorrow on here, thank you for watching. Until later on here on the Vobe Show, see you then. Take care. You're only a youth. Yes, I don't need them. I'm only a youth. What I need to do is to sharpen up. If I only could sharpen up the vision in my prosthetic eye, it would be so much better. Bionics. I thought that was the answer in the 1970s with the Bionic Man. Never came to pass. Bloody rubbish, isn't it? Anyway, enough of this. Catch you later. Take care. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye.